Now Mark and Kevin have softened you up and you're weak. At the end of the day, we're going to finish it off with a proposal. Okay? So it's a question, the answer to which we all want to know. I think every single presentation we've had today has asked a variant of this question, right? I know what you're thinking. It's not KaarbonTech's latest innovation to solve the problem. But if we did have the crystal ball and we dusted it off, what would it say? What would it say is coming for our urban spaces, politically, socially, economically, critically, environmentally? You know, we don't have a crystal ball, but we have got a fair amount of warning signs, haven't we? And the alarms are all flashing. So this was the front page of Nature last week, which is the biggest biological journal in the world. The 1.5 centigrade limit, that was the do not breach limit. And we breached it last year globally. Even though we had a really wet, cold year last year, globally we breached 1.5. Now, I had to talk to Tim earlier and said, Tim, I'm not throwing shade. Like, we lost an awful lot of trees as well. This was no doubt to do with the 2022 drought, but have you any idea what 500,000 trees looks like? You know, how many trucks that takes to put in, and then how many trucks it would take to take them back out again. We're still losing trees from the 2022 drought. No doubt there was other factors at play here, but Kevin and myself spent a good part of the time in 2022 walking around the Arboretum looking at the latest big tree that had just exploded. This is going to happen more often. This isn't going to get easier. This is going to get harder. And as the Daily Mail asked in August last year, is Kew Gardens heading for Tree-mageddon? In hindsight, we wished we'd called our report Tree-mageddon, more woke nonsense, or something like that. So Kevin mentioned it in his talk. One of the early screens we did, we've got a bit more sophisticated now, one of the early screenings we did suggested that maybe half of our trees might be at risk by the end of the century. Doesn't mean that they're going to die. The nuance was lost in the comms with that, but it just means that we're in the twilight zone. We don't know what's going to happen. But as horticulturists, as gardeners, as arborists, we know that plants don't like to grow in suboptimal conditions. So I'm just going to leave that quote up there for a couple of minutes. I do a lot of these kind of presentations, and this quote's a useful one to summarize the issue. So Dave is a researcher in Melbourne, long history of working in Botanic Gardens and in urban green space. The Aussies, some of you might be Australian, some of you might know, the Aussies were sharpened towards this due to the Millennium Drought, which was Australia's worst drought in recorded history, which lasted from the early 90s through to 2010. So adaptation, resilience, they kind of got the jump on it. They produced the world's first landscape succession plan for a botanic garden in 2016, which is what we, I don't want to say copied, but took inspiration from. So who are we, and what's the landscape succession plan? So that's us. Well, that's one of our sites. That's our site in West London. Very simply, we are an approaching 300-year-old botanical institution. We've got sites in West London, but also in Sussex, and a permanent research station in Madagascar. There are 17,000 species in total, taking account the glasshouses and the nurseries as well. 17,000 species on this site alone, which is the Guinness World Record for the most diverse single-site botanic garden in the world. That's 5% of known plant species you can see on a visit to Kew Gardens, which is staggering. It's my favourite stat. Kev mentioned 11,000 trees. About 1,500 species, about 1,500 total native species in the UK. We've got that many trees and shrubs here. You can't click your fingers and create this tomorrow. This is centuries worth of work putting this together. I looked at the London Assembly tree report last week. I think they said that 90% of London's trees are made up by 25 species. There's 1,500 on this site. So we can learn a lot from that. But what's a landscape succession plan? As you can see, our landscape owes a lot. The joke is we're a field with 11,000 trees in it. That's the front cover of our plan. And very simply, what we asked was, what is the likelihood of our landscape, our design features? This is a vista for us, but it could be a main road for you. What's the likelihood of this feature, 120-year-old avenue of mainly London Plane and Hollyoak? What's the likelihood it ends up like that by the end of the century? This image is not real. The grass is real. This was from 2022, but my talented colleague Jeff photoshopped all the leaves off the trees. But if we do nothing, is that a real risk? We wanted to find out. So this is the first pass that we did. This was the work that Kevin mentioned. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but green equals good, like Kevin's pie charts. Orange equals not so good, and red equals bad. And it means anything that's green has similar conditions in the wild. Now, this is a map for now. So this is all of our trees. So the picture right now is about 80% have similar conditions in the gardens than what they'd have in the wild. If we fast forward to the end of the century, this is where the Daily Mail got their headline from. So up to 50%, if we look at this variable alone under this scenario, might be experiencing temperatures that they haven't evolved to deal with in the wild. What does that mean? What can you do about it? But so what? Why am I here talking to you about that? Why should you care? We know an awful lot about those 1,500 species that exist within our wall. But as you can see, we're a fraction of Richmond. We're not even the biggest green space in Richmond. That accolade goes to Richmond Park. Staring wistfully across the river at Hounslow. We zoom out to the southeast. We're just a bend in the river. It's fairly inconsequential. Whatever we do inside our walls won't actually make a big difference to people or the trees outside the walls. This is an image from the 1900s. This is the actual literal wall that surrounds Kew Gardens, and I look at it quite a lot, and it takes on a metaphorical kind of meaning because it actually serves as a barrier to knowledge exchange sometimes, both literally and figuratively. And I'm interested in how we can figuratively take that wall down, not literally because it's listed, but those trees are still there now. All the other stuff that Kev spoke about goes on behind the walls, but the twain have not met yet. And I'm interested in how we can address that. And this is where you come in. So one of our big goals is to expand our reach, strengthen where we have weak links and make links where we have none. Okay, I've mentioned the Tree Management Research Group. So we are your national public botanic garden. We're DEFRA funded. They're our main sponsor to the tune of about £30 million a year. We, in many ways, exist to serve you, but we don't. We have very, very little to do with things in the national interest. We do loads of stuff internationally. There's two things I think a botanic garden should do. It's look after your native wild plants and look after your native cultivated plants. But we don't do enough. So this is where I'm extending this opportunity to you. How does that look? I can see a few puzzled looks. This is a UK Research Institute funding call, real life one from 2023 from the National Environment Research Council. They've got fairly opaque titles to them. This one, Innovation in Environmental Monitoring. So I fixed the title for you. That could mean new tree watering system that actually works. Think back to the 500,000 dead trees at the beginning. What if we had a system, we've talked about it already, that knew when the soil moisture was getting low and directed the contractors to the newly planted trees in a prioritized order and got those trees watered? We could make a real life difference. If we even got 5% of that mortality rate down, that'd be making a real world difference. If you think this is a little bit far-fetched, this is literally copied from the eligibility criteria for that grant. So you can't apply for this grant unless you work in partnership with real world users of sensing systems and capabilities, which is you guys, within DEFRA Group, which is us, with the UK private sector, which is KaarbonTech. So just let that sink in for a little bit. If you work for a local authority, you can't apply for this grant alone. Kev and I can't apply for this grant alone. KaarbonTech can't apply for this grant alone. If we partner up and put a proposal together, suddenly we're eligible for this grant. So what can we achieve together? I mean, you probably know this much better than I. On my table, there's been some good discussion about the customers, the residents. This is what we can achieve for us. This is the strands of our corporate strategy, which are the most exciting of strategies. Somebody on my table said they were drowning in strategies, which I quite like and know the feeling of. But put simply, the Tree Management Research Group, which is what we hope to take forward from today, would help me deliver science-based knowledge and solutions, which is our biggest strand in our corporate strategy. It would also help us extend our reach, start a conversation with people we're not currently talking to, and also strengthen links that are weak at present and make them strong. And this one is a critical one. It might help us influence national policy. This is literally one of our corporate priorities, trying to influence policy. We've heard a lot about biodiversity net gain. We've heard a lot about, the best way I could put it is horticulturally inadvisable British native-only planting schemes. This would help me do 3 of these 5 things. So what about for you? Our landscape succession plan, bearing in mind it was written by a glorified gardener in me and a jumped-up tree surgeon in Kev, it cost us no money with data that we already had on a garden scale. It's got a reach of 1.7 billion now, which is a meaningless number, which is all the total press outlets that ran it and their total readership summed together. But what we can do is measure that against other stories that we released last year, and it's the biggest. People care and people see it as a good news story. It's, okay, this is happening, the alarm lights are on, but here's what Kew Gardens are doing about it. Imagine if we could partner up with, scale that up. Nobody has done the screening that Kev has talked about on a local authority level. I'm not aware of anyone worldwide that's done it, certainly nobody in the UK. Just a thought, we need positive, good news stories at this time. The exchange of information, and I mean that 2 ways, because I know absolutely nothing about what it takes to plant a tree in a street. I know nothing about the actual process of what it takes to select it, how you pay for it, how you plant it, how you maintain it. I know a lot about taxonomy and nomenclature and planting a tree in a garden and telling the gardener to go water it, but I know absolutely nothing about the reality of it. That tantalizing thing of being able to make a real world difference and helping get that wall down, figuratively, that's what I really, really want to do. Climate change is the great unifier, I think, and the extinction crisis. Let's stop kind of working in our silos that we've talked about before and start collaborating for a better future. I just want to pull back to that point. Individually, and as far as that grant is concerned, we can't do it individually, categorically, but together we can. So there's going to be a QR code at the end, which will take you to the Tree Management Research Group website, and there is a link on there where you can sign up and register your interest. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and that's pretty much it, isn't it, Mark?
Thank you.